There are a lot of fighters fighting this month that a lot of people seemingly just can't stand and are very unpopular. Well, I'm here to defend some of these fighters as well as some other fighters who I think people are simply too harsh on them. Let's get right into this. First up, we're going to be talking Alexandre Pantoja. So first up, he's a dominant champ and I think he's definitely underranked on the pound for pound list and should be higher. I think he should at least be above Volkanovski and Leon Edwards. Now, of course, Volkanovski's still higher all time, and Leon Edwards' wins over Kamaru Usman are still probably better than any of Pantoja's wins, but going off where they're all currently at in their careers, I think Pantoja can at least be above those two and could easily be above other fighters. And he's arguably more deserving of fighting for another title than most other champs, but pretty much nobody is even considering this possibility. I get it, it's because it wouldn't necessarily do big numbers, but if there's any champion who's really truly cleared out their division, it is Pantoja. And people call him boring a lot, but 2/3 of his title fights have been absolute bangers. Him versus Moreno in 2023 was my personal fight of the year, and him versus Urseg was a phenomenal fight as well. And then his fight against Royval, yeah, it wasn't great, but it was still better than the main event of Colby Covington and Leon Edwards, because that fight was another level of bad. So I think people need to give Pantoja a little bit more respect, but I guess this is always kind of the case with flyweight. I feel like even someone like Davison Figueiredo has been getting a lot more love since he's moved up to bantamweight than he ever got at flyweight. Now, let's talk Ian Garry. Yes, it's easy to make fun of him for all the cuck stuff. I get that. But I think we do have to give him his flowers in that he is absolutely game to fight whoever the UFC puts in front of him. So he was booked to fight Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal pulls out, and then he fought Neil Magny on short notice and 30-24'd him. I think you gotta respect that. Of course, he didn't finish him, but how often do you see a 30-24 scorecard? And now he's stepping up to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov on short notice. And in the last year, another fight is against Michael Venom Page, which was down the rankings, and there was no reason for Ian Garry to take that fight, but hey, he took it to stay active. Like, Ian Garry has fought twice since Shavkat has last fought, and I think he's also underrated skill-wise. Shavkat might have finished Jeff Neal, and Ian Garry won a decision, but Shavkat really fought a war to win that, whereas Ian was pretty much not touched by Jeff Neal. Yes, Ian was more boring, but you could argue he was definitely the cleaner fighter in that case, and I do think that Ian Garry is also underrated skill-wise, and so even though, yeah, he isn't the most exciting striker, I think you gotta admit, hey, he's game to fight whoever the UFC puts in front of him, and you gotta respect that. Now, let's go on to Aljamain Sterling. So first up, he's arguably the bantamweight GOAT. He lost basically one time, and people act like he's a bum now, like he's a nobody. And the UFC disrespect is crazy, putting what is likely a title eliminator bout in the middle of the prelims with him versus Evloev on UFC 310 is absolutely insane. Now perhaps the bout order has changed by the time I'm putting this video up, but come on, you've got negative record Kron Gracie on the main card instead of this title elimination bout just because Aljo's on it. Absolutely ridiculous. And yes, people like to say he's boring, but I think they overblow how boring Aljo is. I would say he's still probably more entertaining than Merab because at least he does have occasional finishing ability with some pretty unique submissions that he's pulled off. And I would say his fight on UFC 300 against Calvin Kattar was still better than Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. So I don't think it was even the worst fight on that card. Next up, speaking of Aljamain Sterling versus Movsar Evloev, I think you could say put Movsar on this list, or I think I'll just talk like Dagestanis in general. So I do think the Dagestani hate has come down over the years. I think it used to be much higher a couple years back, but I think people have started to come around to them a little bit more, but a lot of people still seem to hate on these fighters a lot more than you need to. And Dagestani fighters, that of course refers to people like Khamzat Chimaev, Islam Makhachev, Magomed Ankalaev, all the guys with those big beards, you know what I'm saying. And so, people like to say they're just a bunch of crotch sniffers or whatever, but a lot of these guys can actually strike. Like, look at Magomed Ankalaev. Most of the time, he prefers to strike. He really only grapples if he needs to. And, I mean, the grappling itself of most Dagestani fighters is entertaining. They all have great ground and pounds. They all have great submission abilities, for the most part, of course. I would say Evloev is, of course, on the weaker side, but come on, look at a guy like Islam Makhachev or Khamzat Chimaev. Are you telling me those are boring fighters? Get out of here, man. And honestly, a lot of them have legitimately funny and entertaining personalities too. I mean, they have some pretty clever trash talk a lot of time. Like whenever you see Islam Makhachev and Daniel Cormier in an interview together, it's usually quite entertaining. So while people have come around to the Dagestanis, I still think we need the rest of the people too, because I think these are always some great fighters. Like, I'm not complaining when I see a bunch of Dagestanis on a card like most people do. Now, this might be the most controversial yet, and that's Belal Muhammad. But I would kind of put him up here for one main reason, and that's he sent Leon Edwards into complete and utter and total irrelevance. And we can all be thankful for that. But beyond that, you got to admit, he's game to fight contenders and be reasonably active, certainly more so than Leon. Yes, of course, now he's probably going to be without a fight for quite some time, but he was, of course, planning to fight Shavkat in December for his injury. And you certainly have to respect that compared to Leon Edwards fighting once a year. And I think people exaggerate how boring his style is. I mean, he's, again, more entertaining than Leon Edwards. This is really just turning into a Leon Edwards hate fest. Anyways, his hands like Canelo, he was legit bringing it to Leon, and I legitimately enjoyed watching that fight. And lastly, this guy, I don't think people really dog on him for his fight style in the way that they do, say, Belal Muhammad, but I think they really trash on his personality, and that's Jamahal Hill. Now, look, he did help save UFC 300. He was coming back before his injury was fully healed. You can't give Alex all the credit. I know we like to say, yeah, Alex is the short notice guy. He is putting up the title. Absolutely a ton of respect to Alex, but you still have to give credit to his opponents too. They're giving up their opportunity to get a title shot to making it short notice, which means, of course, they don't get to prepare quite as much. And so if you think, oh, I'm only getting one title shot, you got to give that person credit for giving up that one title shot as a short notice fight. And, again, like I said before, he's not really a boring fighter. I mean, watch his fight with Glover. I mean, it's pretty hard to watch because of how badly he does Glover, but that's not because it's a bad fight. And but the main reason a lot of people trash him is because of his trash talk. But really, why is that a bad thing? Sometimes people trash talk and everyone's all for it. Look at Ilia Topuria. But then some people trash talk and everyone just hates on him, aka Jamahal Hill. I think it's good that Jamahal Hill is doing this. Everyone else at the top of the light heavyweight division is really just like a stoic. It's good that you have one guy here who's trying to create some drama and bring a little bit more excitement to the, say, interviews and outside of the cage at light heavyweight, because outside of the cage at light heavyweight, the pickings are pretty slim. So, respect to Jamahal Hill for continuing to talk trash too. He didn't just stop after his loss, he's continuing to go for it. And honestly, I think you kind of have to respect the grind. Anyways, any fighters I missed out on, comment them down below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.